Now, welcome to another Sunday conversation, where this will once again be more of a candid talk about things that go a bit beyond Star Wars, or is maybe a way of taking some of the lessons of Star Wars and giving them a real-world example, or giving them some real-world context, you could say. Anyway, 2 weeks ago in one of these videos, I talked about how balance in Star Wars is actually pretty simple and straightforward. It's just people never taking or expecting more than they can give or are willing to give. And because, yes, this is such a debated topic in the fandom, and to be fair, George Lucas never did give us anything like a solid or definitive answer in the films on what balance actually is, well, there was some pushback to it just being as easy as that, or others asking, why is it that only too much dark side, which is essentially selfishness, why is it only that causes imbalance?
The core of the Force. I mean, you got the dark side, the light side. One is selfless, one is selfish. And you want to keep them in balance. What happens when you go to the dark side is it goes out of balance, and then you...
Even Lucas, in the clip I played, says you have to keep the two sides of yourself in check. You have to keep the selfless and selfish sides of yourself in balance, before he then goes on to explain what happens if you go to the dark side and how that causes imbalance, and eventually leads to suffering for the person who has become imbalanced and everyone around them. But what happens if you go too far to the other side, to the light side, or become too selfless? Is that even possible? Is it possible to be too compassionate and to do or give too much to others? And if it is, what would that even look like, and what would be the downside of it? Was it perhaps even the downfall of the Jedi during the prequels, doing too much? I've argued before, part of their problem, a big part, was following the will of the Republic over following the will of the Force, trying to be too proactive in the galaxy and help in places they weren't exactly needed. And so to dig right into it, first of all, if you were utterly and completely selfless to the point where you refused to want, take, or keep absolutely anything for yourself, where you are literally giving the shirt off your back or the food off your plate every time you have something to give, well, you'd either just die of exposure or starvation, or you'd become a burden upon a society who maybe tries to keep you alive when you refuse to do that for yourself. Which, to be clear, is much, much different from being unable to care for yourself, either partially or completely, and having society care for you in some respect. But anyway, being selfish to a degree is not inherently bad. It is necessary simply to survive. There are things we must have to live. There are also things we want because they will make life better or because we simply enjoy them. And hopefully we enjoy them in moderation depending on just what they are. And generally, these things, or services, or experiences, whatever they might be, they can be provided by someone else that we can then give something in exchange for something we can provide for them, which is basically one of the foundations of how a society or civilization works, right? It's people living and working together for mutual benefit, like a symbiotic circle, you could even say, where we all play our part. Though, yes, we tend to just use money nowadays, not directly exchange goods and services. But what if you're not expected to do or give anything for the things you either need or want? What if virtually everything is given to you by a very compassionate society, shall we say? Which immediately reminds me of the old saying I'm sure many of you know, about how if you give a man a fish, he can eat for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, he can feed himself for a lifetime. Well, under this circumstance, you could add another part onto that, I think, which is if you give a man a fish every day for his lifetime, he'll never need to learn how to do anything. And eventually he is going to feel entitled to that fish, all the while likely having zero sense of self-worth, because he has no real purpose in the world other than to exist and to eat that damn fish. In other words, as utopian as it may sound to live in a society where you never have to work and to have everything given to you, where all your needs and wants are always met, I don't think that's a good thing for your mental health to have a society that provides everything for you, to the point where if you don't want to, you don't have to do anything. Just look at a movie like WALL-E for an example of how that can quickly go wrong. And to be very clear here, I am not saying I love how the modern world works in this department, where so many people are little more than interchangeable cogs in the machine of mega corporations who really do not care about them, who see you and what they pay you as annoying little subtractions off their bottom line, who can't wait to replace you with AI so they can have even more money. I'm also not talking about someone who, like I was saying before, maybe can't fully take care of themselves for any number of reasons, a disability perhaps. Though it is interesting to note that oftentimes people with a disability want to work and don't like everything being given or done for them. They want to be treated like everyone else, to be as independent as possible and to give something back, to live a balanced life of give and take. And I think we all, or most of us, certainly not all of us, but we have this inherent desire to not want to be taken care of, to want to do our part and to contribute to society, to feel like we have a place and a purpose in the world, to feel important or needed, or like what we do matters or makes a difference, even in a small way, in the lives of other people. Which again isn't easy to do when you go to a job where you do feel like a wage slave for a mega corporation, where you can't even see how what you are doing matters and where the people who you are helping, the customers you may interact with, they oftentimes treat you like crap or lesser somehow. In other words here, being compassionate to the point where you take care of all the needs and wants of someone else, or everyone else, where nothing is ever expected of them, well, I think that is an example of how too much light or too much compassion could be a very bad thing. You end up turning people dependent and entitled and take away a sense of self-worth in the process. And in an odd sort of way, being shown too much compassion, you could say, it turns you into a selfish person, one who only takes and never gives anything back. And in Star Wars with the Jedi, as I was saying earlier, I think they were becoming a bit too proactive in the galaxy. They obviously weren't doing literally everything for the people. Instead, they were simply helping and solving problems they weren't necessarily needed for. I mean, when you see two people having a problem or an argument, a dispute of some kind, you don't always need to try and jump right in and solve it for them. You can certainly act as a sort of intermediary if they want you to, which the Jedi do. They are like ambassadors who try to find peaceful resolutions. But something tells me they were starting to do a bit more than that, and it was potentially breeding contempt for them. As I pointed out in a video the other day, there is this very interesting line in The Phantom Menace, which I saw again just the other day in the theater, and it's a line I had never given a moment of thought to before, but it's when Rune Haku, one of the Nemoidians, says of the Jedi that they're here to force a settlement. And yeah, that could be the bad guy upset they now have to negotiate. That is obviously not part of the plan here. Or it could be a sort of subtle clue that, again, the Jedi have become a bit too proactive. They're becoming enforcers who end disputes, not ambassadors who allow two sides to figure out and settle their own issues. And so, kind of going along with that would be always looking out for someone else's best interest, to the point where you were always trying to tell them exactly what they should or need to do, how to live their life, essentially, in order for them to be a better person. Basically, where, in their best interest, or so you would claim, you end up trying to force something upon them, a way of life or a set of beliefs, in order to better or improve them. However, though at face value this may seem overly compassionate, I would actually argue this is very, very selfish. Perhaps the most selfish thing you could ever do is expect someone to live a certain way or demand they accept a certain set of beliefs or ideals, whatever it might be. There needs to be tolerance. We need to learn how to tolerate that some people will not believe the very same things that we do, and that doesn't automatically make them wrong or evil or some sort of enemy to defeat. But again, this is selfishness, not selflessness. It may be, as I was saying, born of trying to be too compassionate, but it quickly becomes the very opposite. It's maybe even sort of like how Anakin, or Vader, wants to bring peace, freedom, and security to his new empire. However, here, yes, some beliefs or ways of life can certainly be deemed wrong or evil, or maybe even self-destructive to the individual. And sitting back and allowing someone to do whatever they want in the name of compassion isn't really being all that compassionate. This could be another example of how too much light, where you tolerate virtually anything, can be bad. Though obviously the tricky part is, where does tolerance end and allowing evil begin? If someone is doing something that is hurting themselves and only themselves, and they are fully aware, not being coerced or under some kind of mental duress or anything of the sort, they are 100% okay with what they are doing and what the outcome could be, is it okay to try and stop them? I mean, you're motivated by compassion, but you are ultimately taking away their free will. But anyway, I feel like I'm drifting into a sort of different topic now, and I have no idea if anyone has found what I've said already to be interesting, so maybe it's about time to wrap this up. And what I'm basically saying here is that, yes, you can become too compassionate. There can be too much light. There's a reason why George Lucas said you have to keep the two sides in balance, though what I find interesting, at least with the examples that I sort of discussed here, is that becoming too selfless actually tends to lead to a form of selfishness a lot of the time. Help someone too much and they ultimately come to expect it, if not even demand it, or want to try and do what is best for someone all the time, leads to selfishly wanting to control them. But anyway, before I get going again, that is all I have for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about any or all of this. Or tell me what you think about these videos. Do you enjoy them? Should I keep doing more of them? These Sunday conversations? Whatever the case may be, do leave your comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.